Heavy Cardboard, Episode 9, Vinhos. Coming to you from down the road from the birthplace of the original Phantom of the Opera, Lon Chaney, Denver, Colorado. Welcome to Heavy Cardboard, where we talk medium-heavy strategy board games, war games, 18xx, and other related topics in the board gaming hobby. We're your host. He's Tony.
He's Edward. Let's remind you guys how to get in contact with us. You can reach us on Twitter at Heavy Cardboard. Our Facebook account is Heavy Cardboard. We have email at heavycardboard@gmail.com and on the web at heavycardboard.com.
Also, we have a new guild on Board Game Geek, so definitely would like for you guys to come join the discussion. We'll have a link in the show notes for you. Also, we definitely appreciate you guys rating us on iTunes, maybe leaving a review. That'd be great. So awesome. Before we start tonight, how about them Cowboys?
Wow.
While I'm a much bigger college football fan than I am an NFL fan, still been a Cowboy fan my whole life. You being a Saints fan?
Yeah.
You know.
I guess it made up for last year.
Yeah, that drubbing my boys took.
But, man, I don't know. My Saints are in some serious trouble.
Yeah, you guys don't have defense. Your defense is like our defense last year.
I went into that game thinking the only defense worse than the Saints was the Cowboys. And
Nope. I got to admit, though, nobody's more surprised about the way the Cowboys are playing than Cowboy fans. It looks like the dedication to the run game and playing defense. What is this, 1995?
It's still Jason Garrett. They'll be 8-8 at the end of the year.
I have no doubt. I'm not arguing, but right now, this moment, it feels good. So while we're on the subject of football, my Oregon Ducks have a big game Thursday, hosting the Arizona Wildcats. 22.5-point favorite. Not that I'm a betting man, but if I were, I'd take the 22.5 in Arizona. That's just way too many points for my boys to lay. And by the time this uploads, because we're actually uploading a day late, sorry about it. It's my back's fault. Hopefully my Ducks have already covered and took them behind the woodshed. Couple more sports-related things.
Okay.
Baseball season, sadly, shut up.
Wait a minute. It's not over until these stupid baseball playoffs.
Yeah, but sadly, it has come to an end for my beloved Cincinnati Reds. At least they forced the Pirates into the wild card, which I'm happy about. And hopefully they can address that gaping wound in left field and what to do with the 3 pending free agents they have in the starting rotation. So hopefully in Walt I trust, but I'm nervous going into next year. Lastly, this is our last podcast before the NHL regular season kicks off.
That I'm excited about.
So I expect a bounce back from my Canucks. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, it's going to be weird seeing him without Kessler. But then again, he was pretty much hurt and playing like he was hurt for the last 2 years. So it's almost like we were rid of him 2 years prior.
Yeah.
So, but nonetheless, it's going to be weird. I expect a bounce back year. I'm thinking second round of the playoffs for my Canucks. How about your Avs?
I think we're going to build on last year's success. I don't know. We're not going to sneak up on anybody this year.
No, definitely not.
And so I'm expecting a tougher season, but I'm definitely expecting us to get out of the first round this year, hopefully get a little deeper now that we have a few guys like Aginla giving us some of that veteran presence in the locker room. Tanguay will remain healthy this year, knock on wood. And those guys will give our young guys a boost the whole season. And even though the Canucks are the Avs and the Canucks aren't in the same division as of last year.
Right.
Still got a tinge of hatred towards them.
Sure, right. I totally get that.
It'll take me a few seasons to get over that, where I can actually, like them.
Right.
So
brutal division, though. Brutal division.
Which one? The Avs' new division?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. St. Louis, who just got stronger.
Right.
And Chicago, of course.
Right.
It's just, yeah.
It's
gonna be a hard year, but so excited about it, man.
Cool. See, I figure I'd end on the hockey talk.
Yes.
Get you fired up, get you in the mood, ready to rock and roll.
You were scaring me with that baseball.
Yeah, I know. Hey, I'm just, my loves as well, just because you're weird and don't like those two. But I digress. So let's move into, what have you acquired recently, my friend?
Well, sir, Manila arrived.
Okay.
As has Port Royal.
Okay. Yeah. Man.
Two ladies, light cardboard.
Right.
And Endeavor, I won in a BGG auction, so
Right.
That'll be on its way.
I saw that yesterday morning. That was cool to see. I'm happy for you. And happy for me, because that means I get to
You'll
try
get to play it.
Right.
That's right. What about you, man?
I'm still holding firm on the whole no buying of games, which Amanda's quite proud of me about. I'm quite proud of me about. However, that doesn't mean I haven't acquired anything. There was a leftover math trade, and acquired 2 new games. Praetor, which is a worker placement tile-laying games where players assume the role of Roman engineers tasked with building the eternal city, i.e. Rome. The cool thing about it is your workers age and eventually retire, which looks to be kind of a cool mechanic.
Sure.
There are some people saying it's not broken. Other people are saying it's broken, which to me says it's a good mix. I'm happy with that. Looking forward to playing that. The other one that I acquired was Space Empires 4X and the Close Encounter expansion, which I know you're not going to be a big fan of because it's a hex encounter war game, but it's a 4X game, which is explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. So the board, the map, it's just space. It's pretty
black with white hexes.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty boring looking,
awesome.
But it's supposed to be a really good game. And one more, I was given a gift.
Yeah?
Yeah, which our buddy Paul Chad knows how big of a fan I am for his copy of New Heimat.
Yes.
New Heimat? Anyway, New Heimat, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so he bought me a copy. A buddy of his bought 8 copies, had them imported from Germany, and had the cost down to, a pittance compared to what it would be if you imported it yourself. And that was really cool of him. So thank you, Paul Chad.
Right on, man.
So yeah, that's it for the acquired. What you been playing?
Well, I've been playing a little bit of Port Royal and Manila since they have arrived, but
all you.
No, Manila's got some gambling in
no,
it.
That does look interesting.
It's totally like, random, whatever, but you're betting. It's kind of cool.
All right.
Obviously, we've been playing a lot of Vinhos still.
Sure.
So, and Fire in the Lake is about the only other thing I've been having some time for.
Nice. So, still 1 play, 2 plays, what?
Would it be 40% of a play? I mean,
okay.
I don't know.
Right.
I'm going to tell you some more details here in a bit.
Cool.
What about you?
Actually, since we last recorded, quite a few. It helps when Paul Chad comes over every Saturday.
Yeah. And my buddy John was in town, so I couldn't come over.
Right, which was a bummer. You were missed. But the stuff that we've been playing the last couple weekends, busted out some more Craftsman.
Mm-hmm. We played Craftsman last night.
There you go. City Hall, which I'll talk about more here in a little bit. Madeira, which was Paul Chad's first play, and he absolutely fell in love with it. That was cool. Vinhos, obviously, like you mentioned.
Paul Chad's favorite game.
Right. Puerto Rico, the limited edition copy that I have, which never gets old. Every time we play that, we're like, we need to play this more.
Yeah, it's a terrific old game.
It really, yeah. Cult of the old, if you will.
Cult of the old.
A couple others. Metropolis, the cool auction mechanic, auction bidding game. I
still need to play that.
I'm amazed you haven't played that.
Love auctions.
Yeah.
Need to play it.
Well, same with City Hall. And lastly, the last game we played Saturday was 1846 again.
Good. I know you haven't purchased any new games lately, so I'm imagining that a few more maybe made their way onto your radar lately.
Yeah, there may be a couple.
Okay. Let me know, sir.
Well, first off, I've added one thing onto the Essen and Beyond Geek list that I've been maintaining since last podcast, and that's Cargo Train by Krzysztof Matuzik, which is the designer of Craftsman. He's apparently a big fan of the show. So hi, Krzysztof.
Hey,
thanks.
Chris.
One game that Paul Chad's going to mule for me is Namibia. Easier to play, I hope, than to say. So he's going to Essen. As you know, he's going to Spiel. And so actually, Paulo Soledad, the designer of Madeira and Panamax, is selling his copy in an auction for Essen, and so I'm bidding on it, not because it's Paulo, but because I really want the damn game. And so if I win the auction, Paul Chad's going to pick it up for me. It's a brutal auction game where players mine for commodities, sell those commodities at the market, and convert money to reputation or victory points over the course of 6 rounds. Like I said, brutal auction, and under the radar gem. Yes, please, and hard to get.
What's it called again?
Namibia.
All right.
Lastly, I'm still hunting for reasonably priced copies of what I'm calling the Big Three for Martin Wallace that I don't own. Yeah. And that's Princes of the Renaissance, God's Playground, and After the Flood. So yeah, that's pretty much it. How about you?
Well, maybe two things.
Okay.
One is it's a little game called Downtown. The really interesting part of the game is how turn order is established.
Okay.
It's totally cool because basically you're bidding on turn order, but in a way I've never seen a game bid on turn order. I'll say no more. Please check it out. It looks really cool. Not a heavy game or anything like that.
But just the cool mechanic.
That mechanic of the turn order stuff looks really super cool.
All right, cool. I'll check it out.
And I was thinking about Bios Megafauna.
Dude, another Phil Eklund.
I know.
There are so many Eklund games that sound awesome. They're supposed to be more simulation than game, but that doesn't mean I don't want to try these.
Yeah, this is supposed to be more game than simulation of American biofauna or American something or other.
Right.
American megafauna.
There you go.
That's what it is. But still looks cool. There's like little alligator meeples and dinosaur meeples and stuff, you know.
Sucker for our meeples.
Mammals.
So yeah, I would love to play that if you end up getting a copy before I do. That'd be cool.
Right on. Edward, I know that you've been playing City Hall. You've recently acquired that, and I'm very anxious to hear about City Hall. But first, I know there's a game you want to talk about that one of our listeners requested.
Yeah, it's Deadliest Catch Sea Adventure game, designed by Joyce Johnson and Colleen McCarthy Evans, and published 2010 by Ideal. In the game, you get to be the captain of your all-time favorite ship, Time Bandit, Wizard, Northwestern, or the Cornelia Marie, even. Nah, I'm just f***ing with you. The game I do want to talk about, City Hall.
Nice.
All right, so City Hall, designed by Michael R. Keller, which is important because to not be confused with Michael Keller II, who's the designer of La Granja. Published by Tasty Minstrel Games. Plays 2 to 4 players. Plays in about 90 minutes, which is probably true after your first game. Our first game, we played 3-player, and it took about 2 hours, the teaching of the rules and everything. I'd say 90 minutes is fair. So in the game, players are vying to become mayor of New York City. To do this, they have to be the most successful at both raising their approval rating and raising the city's population. Players bid for one of the 7 offices in the game each round, so in each round the number of offices bid on and activated are equal to the number of players. So in our 3-player game, only 3 of the 7 offices were bid on. The other 4 get one influence added to them to make them more enticing to be chosen next round. Each office is bid on with the active player matching one of the highest bids, so you can actually do matching bids. So if you were to bid 3 influence, I could also bid 3 influence, and then whoever the active player chooses one of our bid or matches that bid and pays that amount to the bank. It's similar to New Heimat, like the game that Paul Chad just got me a copy of, but it's not a closed economy like that game is, because you're paying to the bank, so on and so forth. There are 2 currencies in the game. There's influence and there's cash. Influence is what you bid with for the different offices to wrest control of that office and to take that action. Cash you use to pay for land and properties that you build on that land, as well as this, you spend it to gain influence and to increase your approval rating. What's built next to the buildings that you build in the 3 different boroughs in New York City affect the star level of your building. So if you build a really nice neighborhood housing community, I can be an absolute ass and come and build a factory right next to it and hammer the value of your neighborhood, and vice versa.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of kind of take that in the area screwage, if you will, because it's not really an area control. It's not an area majority. It's just you're building this to help influence your rating and your population in the game. And so you can screw with each other regarding that. At the end of the game, there are 9 endorsements that players can earn by meeting certain in-game goals, like whoever has the most land, most factories, so on and so forth. The game ends if either a player's approval rating is pegged out at the highest level, which is 5, or if the game timer reaches the end, then that triggers the end of the game. Players figure their vote total, which is their approval rating, multiply it by the population that they brought into the city. Add 10 to that total for each endorsement, and there's your winner. So what I think's cool about the game is the bidding mechanic is quite reminiscent of New Heimat.
Well, I've also heard of Goa.
You know, I know that, is it Seth Jaffe, I think, is the one, the head at Tasting Minstrel? So. He says it reminds him a lot of Goa. I've only played Goa once or twice. I'm not seeing it really, to be honest with you. As soon as I played this game, I was like, oh my God, this is just like New Heimat, which is a huge compliment because you know how much I love that game.
Yeah.
The only difference, though, is that the players, when they win a bid, they don't pay each other because it's not a closed economy like it is in New Heimat.
Right.
You only play the bank. So bloating a bid that someone obviously is going to want isn't directly helping you because they're not paying you that bid, but you're hurting them because you're forcing them to spend more influence than they normally would have. So by hurting them, you're helping yourself, but not as much as what you would normally think. The production quality on the game's really good. The artwork on the money cards is really cool.
I wrote a note here as you were talking. I really dig the money cards. Very simplistic.
Yeah.
Very minimal. Very awesome.
But beautiful. Yeah. Really well done on that. So something that I think's not too cool are the endorsements at the end. They kind of feel almost bolted on.
Is that the 10 points per thing?
Yeah.
When you said that, I was like, that sounds weird.
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was necessary. But I feel like it's kind of almost their goals that you can focus on throughout the game to be able to get that. But I just not too keen on it. I'm not saying they're bad, just I'm not a huge fan of that one aspect of the game.
Okay.
As far as a rating goes, I want to play it more before I give a rating.
Yeah, I'd like to play it as well.
Yeah, I want you to because I think you're going to really enjoy it. No. But I do think it's a solid, if not a bit maybe nicer, friendlier version of New Heimat. That's the best way I can describe it.
Okay. Definitely be interested in playing it.
Yeah, and that's City Hall by Michael Keller. So you said we were going to talk more on Fire in the Lake later. Well,
indeed.
It's later.
Awesome. Weekend before this past one, I played Fire in the Lake with my brother Ben. He in North Carolina, me in Denver. We actually played via Skype. He has a copy of the game. And so he set up the board and I set up the board and then I dealt the cards and just showed him what the cards were and stuff like that. And he would find them and things like that.
That's really a cool way to do it.
Yeah. And it wasn't hard for the two of us to keep the two boards in sync. But what we did was we played for like 5 hours and we played through 15 cards from the deck. We just set up the full game, right? Knowing we would not finish it. So I only have that experience with the game so far. Plus, Matt and I have done a couple of rounds, kind of thing. But so take what I'm going to say with that grain of salt. But so far, this game is really turning me on. So it's, like you said, Fire in the Lake from GMT. It's Mark Herman and Volko Runka. Published this year, 2014. It's just fresh out. The box says 3+ hours. Nah.
Definitely plus.
Plus, maybe on the shorter scenarios and with more experienced players. A couple things about the game. First of all, it's not a history lesson. This is a Euro war game set with a Vietnam theme.
Okay.
And I love history, and I don't look for lessons from my games. For my games, I look for challenges in a historical context.
Sure. A good theme.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the game, the players take one of the 4 factions, the NVA, the USA, South Vietnam, and the Viet Cong, and you're trying to battle the other players in achieving your own unique victory conditions in the game. And even though there's nominally some allied forces, i.e. U.S. and South Vietnam and NVA and VC, only one side will win the game.
So even if the NVA win, or if the North wins, it's either going to be the NVA or the VC.
There's things that the North Vietnamese and the VC are going to do that are symbiotic, and there's things that they're going to do that are not.
Okay. So like similar coin games, right?
Yeah, okay. Exactly. And basically, the sides are conducting various military operations and responding to historical events in the pursuit of their victory conditions. And there's tons of event cards. plenty of variability. I said, I don't know, what am I saying? There's 60 cards in that deck. I think there's like 120 or something like that in the game. So the event cards are just an incredible source of variability in the gameplay.
So even in the full game, you're playing with approximately half the deck.
Yeah, it's
thereabouts.
Yeah, something to that effect.
Wow.
I'm off on the numbers, but...
All right. Because mine's still in shrink,
it's
I'll
looking,
be honest.
It's looking like I got 2/3 of the cards in the deck.
Okay.
Right now.
Wow. So, yeah, definite replayability there.
And they're completely historical. The cards are, at least in name, right? And then each one has little flavor text and effects on the game for the different factions. And the game is just totally full of tough decisions. What do I do when my faction becomes active? Do I pass? Do I take the event? Do I do a full operation? I think even passing is an important, consideration in this game.
Because if the next card, because there's always 2 cards face up, if the next card is super important to you, either to make sure that it happens or to avoid it from happening.
Yeah.
Passing on this turn to set up that next turn might be more important.
You might pass 2 turns in a row.
It is possible.
I saw it happen with my brother. The mechanics are so layered and interwoven that it's just, there's a lot of depth in the gameplay here. A lot of the actions you do one round just set up the actions for you to do in later rounds. Of course, the players in the intervening rounds have an opportunity to adjust to that. One thing I really like is the way that the United States is done in the game. They have lots of firepower, right? But their victory conditions depend on not having too many troops in country.
So they're trying to get out or dodge.
Pretty much, only in the coup rounds can United States troops be committed to or withdrawn from Vietnam, too. So I think that that's really well done about how to handle the U.S. in this conflict. I think that the South Vietnamese are looking pretty well done, too. The police forces are very useful, and they have some special forces capabilities, and their victory conditions reflect some corruption and things like that, so they're looking good. NVA, as well, is interesting. There's a point where you are going to switch from doing guerrilla warfare to bringing in, like, NVA regulars and stuff like that. Boy, it's looking interesting as to when to do that. Ben started doing that a little early, and so that's what made that click in my head, that might be a really tough decision in the game. And the Ho Chi Minh Trail is totally is abstracted in the game, but it's very well done. I think the VC looks like the hardest faction to play. They're all guerrillas, and they can never control provinces or cities. But what do I know anyway? I've only got 5 hours with the game, On that note, it's definitely a long game, full of lots of different calculations of victory conditions and things like that. But I think that the gameplay so far is looking like it's going to be very, very rewarding. Maybe the best coin game yet.
Wow.
So
all right.
I've seen a lot of people referring to it as that as well, as the best coin game so far.
It was the one I was most looking forward to. When I heard about the coin system, I guess a year and a half ago or whatever, I always thought that Vietnam would be the ideal setting for this type of system. And, it's kind of personal to me because my dad was in Vietnam, was a twin 50 gunner on PBR boat on the Mekong. So I have an attraction to this time period.
Yeah.
And so, I was excited about it. And unfortunately, just due to time constraints and everything else, we haven't been able to play it yet.
With that said, I'm not going to give a rating for the game yet. Still too new with it.
Okay.
Right on.
Sounds cool, though, man. I'm looking forward to playing it.
All right, it's time to talk about our feature game for this episode, Vinhos.
Yeah, so Vinhos, published in 2010, designed by Vital Lacerda, artist Mariano Iannelli, published by a whole bunch of different companies,
yes,
but the main ones are Z-Man, What's Your Game, and Yellow. It plays 2 to 4 players and is supposed to play in about 2 hours and 15 minutes, 135 minutes, give or take a little bit. So as far as the components and graphic design go, personally, I think it's pretty solid. The little mini wine barrels are pretty awesome.
Yes.
The art is the same artist as Madeira, Reef Encounter, and the upcoming Zango. I will say that the board, when you first look at it, is pretty intimidating and kind of looks like a mess just because it's so dense.
Yeah, it is overwhelming. It is logical though. After you understand the game, the board is completely sensible.
Yeah, after learning the game, it works really well, but it's the initial, whoa, there's a lot of information on that board. There are some minor graphic design issues that I have, right, but we'll talk about those later. But overall, I'd say the component and graphic design as a whole is pretty solid. What do you think?
Yeah, about the only gripe I guess I have is the money tiles are these little tiny things, but at least they're not paper.
Right, they're little thick cardboard counters. Chips. Right, yeah. Right. So how about the rule book quality, if you will, and clarity? What do you think?
I think that the rule book is clear, very straightforward, has plenty of examples in it.
I think I have a bit of a different view on that. When I first learned the game, you taught it that however many months ago, you taught it to me. Since our more recent plays, I went ahead and read through the rule book, and it does do a great job of breaking everything down into sections, tons of examples and pictures, like you said. But it's kind of tough to understand the fact that some important rules are in the sidebar and everything, and the general layout it doesn't flow really well.
Yeah, you have a completely opposite opinion.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Which is fair.
But yeah, I would say similar in a sense that Panamax totally learnable from the game or from the rule book, but that some of the things that are important aren't where you would necessarily think they would be. But
I'm going to disagree on that because I found everything in the main text.
Okay, fair enough. All right, easy enough.
Yeah. I will say this, though. Game is hard to teach.
Yeah, we'll definitely be covering that, let me tell you. So one other thing that we want to start hitting on is cost and availability. So I was looking online. It's widely available. It's in print, easy to find. I've seen it as low on Board Game Geek, as low as $30, and new at typical online game stores for about $45, $48.
I saw it in a game store today at lunch. Bricks and mortar game store.
Okay. So yeah, widely available.
Absolutely.
So we said that the game plays 2 to 4 players. And now I personally have played this game. It's either 5 or 6 times, and I've played it across all 3 player counts. How about you?
I've never played it 3-player and played it 5 or 6 times myself. Only once 2-player. The rest were 4 players.
So what did you think about the 2-player game?
It's all right. I'd do it again, but I'd prefer not to do it again. I'd prefer to play with 3 or 4 because of there's not enough competition for some of the spots, some of the placements.
Yeah, I have in my notes here that there's less pain of one another. There's less competition of spots, like you say, in the 2-player game. And there's a lot more, what's he doing over there? Okay, he's doing that. I'm going to go do something different to try and stay out of each other's way. So I definitely get that. But we both, when Paul, Chad, and I played it 2-player, we both definitely enjoyed it. And I think it's a rewarding game at 2-player.
It absolutely is.
The game definitely shines more and becomes a lot tougher, I think, as the player count goes up. So I definitely think it scales well, but it's better with higher counts. But absolutely, if you were only going to play this as a 2-player game, I would still definitely say that it's worth checking into.
Yes.
Regarding the length of time, it says that it plays in about 2 hours, 15 minutes or so. I think we found that to be pretty close to true, give or take a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe our last game took a little longer than that, but our games before that were right in that ballpark. So yeah, I think that's fair.
2.5 hours with experienced players and not having to go over the rules.
Yeah.
And it definitely feels like it plays quick to me in that time period.
First 3 years is go right past you.
So let me touch on what this game is, what you're doing in this game. In Vinhos, players play the role of wine producers in Portugal. The game takes place over the period of 6 years, and at the end of the 3rd, the 5th, and the 6th year, each player will present one of their wines that they've produced to the wine tasting fair. At the end of the 3rd fair, which is at the end of the 6th year, players total up their victory points gained, and a winner is determined. At its heart, though, Vinhos is like a lot of the other games that we featured in that it has a whole lot of, just a bunch of interlocking systems. Each decision must be planned out since there are really only 12 core actions throughout those 6 years. But there are bonus actions that you can acquire through the game. The main mechanic is an action selection kind of square rondel in which players can choose from 9 different actions on a 3x3 grid. Each player gets 2 actions per year for a total of the before-mentioned 12 actions over that 6-year period. You can see, though, that every action that you make is going to be critical, the fact that there's only 12 actions. You're going to want to do more than you actually can do.
Absolutely.
Every action that you take in the game is thematic. Export your barrels of wine for prestige. Sell it to the local wine bars to help your bank account. Invest in more vineyards to make better or more varied wines. Build a winery to increase the quality of your wine in that region. Build a cellar in the region to better age your wine. Hire experts to refine your wine and help you at the fair. Hire enologists to further increase the quality of your wine. And finally, release a press release announcing with great fanfare the wine that you're going to be presenting at the fair. So that's the gist of what's going on in Vinhos. But what makes this game heavy?
Let's start with the complexity of the game. In my opinion, the rules are pretty straightforward. And where the complexity comes in is how the rules interact and the timing of your actions. I don't think that this game has the rules complexity as, say, Fire in the Lake or Craftsman or anything like that. The complexity of this game comes in what you need to do and setting about going do it.
I'd agree with that. I think the game, it's just hard. It's dense. And what I mean by dense is the fact that you have so much that you're trying to do and you have so few actions. Unlike most other games, it's so tight. It's just confined and just, oh my God, I have a million things I need to do and I have 12 actions. Granted, you're going to be able to get bonus actions, which are vital to the game. But at its heart, those 12 actions, it's just overwhelming the amount of choices that you have to make and in what order are you going to make those choices. That's where the complexity comes in, I think. There's a ton of different paths to take and the ability to be flexible, which is a wonderful thing in the game, but I think it also adds to the complexity.
Yeah.
Because you can all of a sudden change 180 out from where you were going, and knowing how to do that and that you can do that, it can be really overwhelming at first, I think.
This is the kind of stuff we're looking for in games.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. We want that brutal decision tree, just everything agonizing.
So with a complex game, how is the planning in your mind?
Long-term plan, do you focus on selling? Do you focus on exporting? Do you even bother with the wine fair? Obviously, you have to send wine to the wine fair. But in our most recent game, Matt punted on the wine fair.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't care about the wine he was sending there, and he still found a way to be competitive. And so that just blew my mind when I saw that, because there were so many different avenues.
Yeah. He was in second place by 3 points and ignored the fair.
Right. Just completely punted on it.
He went to the fair.
Sure, yeah.
But only because you have to if you have wine.
And he sent crap wine and just didn't care about scoring at the wine fair. And I love that you have to have a long-term plan, but how you get from point A to point Z, it can take a million different paths.
Yeah, the 12 action thing makes everything you do very, very critical. And it's a razor's edge in this game. Even the ability to get the additional actions with the managers requires even better planning because of the wine that you may have to expend to use the manager's abilities. And the managers give you that, the end game points too. So very, very critical. Timing is one of the key things I think in this game. I'll mention that word again. And it often requires you to change the turn order in order to execute something before someone else does, or get somewhere before someone else does, which means the planning is even more critical now because you just spent one of your 12 precious actions only to change the turn order.
Yeah, to pass.
Right.
It feels like a wasted action.
Oh, it's not.
But it's so important, possibly, depending on what it is you're trying to do, to get ahead of, if not everybody, at least somebody else who you think is going to go take that action. Because, and that rolls into the next thing I was going to bring up, the economy is just ridiculously tight. And because of that, because you have no spare money in this game. You have to be able to plan out your actions and, like you said, jump in front of people and waste inaction, quote unquote, to pass, so that you don't have to spend that just uber important, vital little bit of money that you do have by paying somebody else because they've already gone there.
With money being tight, part of the timing aspect is you need to get in front of people, especially in a 4-player game, when you're selling wine to the local hangouts and when you're exporting wine. Because somebody can come in and just, boom, drop a bomb, 4 or 5 barrels, and you're like, Christ.
And now I have no place to sell my wine or to sell it for prestige or for cash. So that pretty much covers the planning aspect and where the depth comes from there. What about as far as how much luck or randomness is in the game?
I think there's a little. There's not a lot. And what random stuff there is in the game doesn't bother me. And I know that's saying a lot because a lot of times random factors in heavy games are not always well done. Initial turn order is a random factor.
Right.
Big deal. Sometimes.
Although there is a unofficial designer approved variant, which completely removes that from the game. So if you want to completely take that part of the randomness out, you can.
The weather is random, but it does affect everyone equally.
It's like you saw my notes here. This is crazy. All right.
And it's mitigated very easily and wisely done by, acquiring more vineyards or wineries on your estates and things like that.
Or enologists.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's cool because, weather is somewhat
unpredictable.
Right. You kind of know
unless you're the government.
Unless you're And they use those weather tiles to drive the different features and values at the fair. And there are more tiles than there are turns in the game. So you're never really going to see all the same weather patterns from game to game to game.
And so you can't depend on, okay, wait, I've seen this, this, and this. I know this is coming up next, which is a good thing, in my opinion, because you shouldn't be able to, know what the weather is going to be 3 years from now. I would say on one other thing, on those same weather tiles, the demands of the wine managers, what color, what quality, what region they're going to be looking for, that's that randomness as well, because that's on that same weather tile. And that can be frustrating at times because, I really need to get this barrel up to, say,
Alexandra.
Right. And, shoot, I didn't have red wine this time. I only sent white wine to the fair, so I can't get a barrel up there, and I really need it. So that can be a little frustrating. But like you said, for the most part, it's going to even out, and it's the same for everybody across the board. So it doesn't bother me at all.
Let's see, the way the vineyards get stacked up in their provinces is random, but there's only 4 tiles, 2 red and 2 white, so it's not extremely random. And there's a wine expert that will let you just get whatever wine you want.
Right. And speaking of the wine experts, there's going to be that randomness as far as what order, the expert that...
There's only 4 available at any one time.
Right. And so I don't think that's a big deal either.
I have not found a way to mitigate that in the game, but I don't care.
I'll be honest, I've never felt in our plays that crimped what I was trying to do.
No.
I just I looked at what was available, and maybe there's something available that I really do want, and I would go and try and get it, or maybe somebody snakes it ahead of me. So be it. It's my own fault. I could have moved up in the turn order if I really needed it desperately, but I've never seen that as an end-all, be-all one way or the other.
Switching gears a little bit, do you think that the game length is a factor in the heaviness of the game?
No, actually. Normally, I would say absolutely so. But the fact that this game it's almost shockingly fast.
For its weight, it plays quickly.
Yeah, I mean, 2 hours, which to some people is going to be like, wow, it's a long game. But let's face it, to listeners of this podcast and to us, 2 hours is a normal routine game to us. And so, but it's so dense. And again, going back to that, because you have so few actions, you're constantly just focused on the game, even when it's not your turn. And so that 2 hours, I mean, you blink and the game's half over and you're like, oh my God, I still need to do 44 different things.
The first few plays, I was like, why on the 6 years is it, 1, 2, 3 fair, then 4, 5 fair, then 6 fair. And I think it's because, as the game is ramping up, it's like each of the 6 years takes a few minutes longer than the previous one as your tableau builds and as the decisions just get, uber critical.
So let's hit on some general things that we think contribute to the weight and heaviness of the game that we haven't covered already. What do you got?
This is a game about making wine, and you must make wine. If you don't have 3 estates going, making wine, I don't think that you're going to be in the running in this game. And why I think that is a general heaviness thing is because with those 12 actions and 20 things that you need to do, it's very, very easy to miss the focus of producing wine.
So basically not keeping an eye on the prize, so to speak. Stay on course.
Yeah. I think you can probably get away with 2. And I'm sure that people listening out there are going to say, oh, I won and I only had 1 estate. Well,
yeah, no chance on that, I don't think.
Well, I mean, that can't be a dominant strategy. Once is not a trend.
I want to hit on something that you brought up when we were talking about the game length. The fact that each fair, the time before each fair gets shorter because the turns actually get a little bit longer because that razor's edge gets sharper and you need to walk that tightrope even straighter because of the fact that every decision is so critical. You cannot take a misstep.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Something else that we haven't hit on, but we briefly mentioned it at the top of this, was that teaching this game can seriously be a bear, which means that learning it can be a bit of a bear. I hate it, but you can find yourself saying that ever so hated phrase of teaching and learning. I'll hit on that later. And that just drives it. You say that time after time after time when you're teaching this game. And hell, even summing up the goal of the game can be tough. And trying to explain, not get lost in the minutia with this game. It's just teaching it can be a bear.
Well, I think that's a awesome segue into how long it takes people to get the game, because if it's hard to teach, it's going to be naturally then hard to get as a player, as a new player to the game. Really, it's half the game mechanically, because you have to go through 1 fair before you understand mechanically everything that you need to do in the game.
That sounds about right. Sure.
And then, but that doesn't mean you get it.
Right.
That just means you know what the actions do and what are the repercussions of doing various things. And now you've got to put it all together in your next game, because this one's already you're already screwed in this one, buddy.
So how long do you think it takes? What would you say?
I think that to play well and to seriously compete in a group of strong players, 2 games minimum.
I was leaning more towards 3, believe it or not. This game blows my mind at the amount of layers of strategy and layers of... I'm having a hard time putting it into words, but I guess the fact that it's so open-ended and you can change direction and change gears so well in this game, I feel that it can be absolutely overwhelming. And I think the first 2 games, you can play this twice and be like, okay, I get the game, but I have no idea how the hell I'm supposed to win this game.
I'd like to dig a little more on what you're talking about on changing direction and stuff like that. I think I understand what you're saying. You gotta make wine. But are you saying like all the different things you can do with the wine, selling it, the exporting
exactly.
it?
Yeah. It's just, it can be overwhelming because you're like, okay, I can sell it here to get money at the bank, and then I can divest or I can invest and try and get those victory points for having a really good, strong bank account. Or then I could take this wine and maybe export it and work on victory points that way. Oh, well, maybe I want to use a lot of experts, so I want to make sure that I send a really high value wine to the fair so that I can use all these experts to my advantage when it comes to grading the fair.
And the managers.
Yeah.
They cost wine.
Right. But they give you extra actions. So you're.
So it's all of those things in the context of, I need to buy vineyards often, right? All the things you need to do just to get your engine to a point. Then you got to do all those things to exercise your engine. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I think the first game is just not even, I don't know, I'm going to do this. It's just trying to understand the rules of the game and the mechanics.
Yeah.
The second game, you still don't know what the hell you're really doing, but you're at least not drooling on yourself trying to figure stuff out. By the third game, maybe then coming in, you're like, oh, I'm going to try this. And so that's why I'm thinking, really, it's your third game before you really get it. This is, I think, one of the hardest games I've played.
Yes, it is hard. It's quite hard.
It's just, but that's what makes it so amazing.
Yeah.
Is the fact that as hard as it is, it plays in 2.5 hours, which is mind-boggling to me. So, all right. So that's kind of segueing into what makes this game fun? Why do we enjoy this game? Let me start off and reiterate one thing that I said is, as tight as this game is and as razor's edge as this game is, it's extremely flexible in that you can, oh, somebody went there. Okay, I'm going to do this first and try and change my entire goal on the drop of a hat. I love that you can do that. At the same time, it's part of a negative because it can be overwhelming. But I do love that you can switch that direction.
It can induce some AP.
Oh my God!
I've seen AP in our group.
Sure.
And I've been guilty of it myself from turn to turn. And none of us are usually APers. So when we're APing a bit, there's some thinky going on.
Yeah, no doubt. There's definitely smoke in the room.
Yeah. You said, you mentioned what brutal. And I do think that the exporting and the selling of wine can be a brutal timing thing, because like in that last game, Matt sold like 5 barrels it was, to the local hangouts. And that was totally like what I was going to do. And so now I had to change my tactics on the fly. Like you said, I ended up doing some exporting but the very next turn, Matt just took all those barrels and he ended up doing some exporting with them. And it's just,
which then screwed me.
Yeah.
Right.
It can be quite mean.
It can be, but it's not so much. He wasn't doing that
just
to
business.
screw you
it's
over
just business.
or me. He's doing it for his own sake.
It's just business, man.
And that kind of goes into the next thing I was going to say. 5 or 6 plays. Now, every one of these games has played out different. It blows me away the fact that the majority of our group, whenever we've played a multiple player game, meaning 3 or 4, it's been with the same group. And the games have been totally different. There's so many different viable strategies, I feel, in this game that I could play this game, I'm not exaggerating, 20 times and feel like there's still unexplored space here that I'm like, oh, I could try this. I haven't done that before. Oh, I wonder if this in combination with that would work. No one's tried that before. And it just, we were playing this a couple plays ago and I was like, dude, I need to play this 5 more times before I have a really good feel for this. I was like, it's just, there's so many options and so many different directions you can go. I mean, isn't that a huge praise to the game that there's so many viable strategies that there's not, you're not pigeonholed, oh, he's doing X or he's doing Y. That's the obvious thing or whatever.
I think that the one dominant thing, right? Maybe dominant's the wrong word, but again, you got to make wine.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's going to be doing that.
No. I've seen players with one estate.
Okay.
Two
Everybody
estates.
Who's competitive is going to be doing that.
If you want to play the game well, you must use actions to acquire vineyards, wineries, cellars, and things like that. But the variance in because in a 4-player game, there's 8 different regions in play, and each of those vineyards has different benefits and strengths. So even the thing that you have to do in the game, make wine, has such variance in it that I agree. It will take several plays.
In our most recent play, we actually had done something. 3 of us did something that we hadn't done before, and that was we had 4 vineyards at the end of one turn.
Yes.
You divest enough money, you have enough cash on hand that by the end of the second year, 3 of us had all 4 vineyards.
All 4 of our estates had a vineyard in it.
Right. And it just, that was something new. And I was like, wow, this is very crowded all of a sudden.
Well, I will say building your tableau is one of those sense of accomplishment things too. Getting all the different vineyards and maybe a winery and a cellar here and there in your estates. That's pretty darn cool.
That rolls into my next thought, which is the fact that the game's really thematic, I feel like. Follow me on this.
Okay.
We'll just talk about the way the wine fair works. The way your wines are valued, the region it comes from, the reputation of the region, the weather, and whether or not it was real sunny or if it had really crappy weather. Maybe it makes for a less valuable, less desired wine. Was it aged in a cellar? All those things matter. And I dig the thematic way that all that comes across. It's subtle things. And again, theme isn't a huge deal to us, but when it's there, I dig it.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that you're making wine in this game. And it feels like you are making wine in this game.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Also, I mentioned earlier that I feel that when it's not your turn, you should be focusing on what it is you're planning your next turn, 2 turns ahead. Mm-hmm. Therefore, there's very little downtime, I feel like, in the game because you're constantly planning. What do you think?
Yeah, except for when someone else is APing on their planning.
Sure. If they did a piss poor job of planning when it was someone else's turn.
You know what? It also happens is when someone doesn't owe crap to you. Now, like, oh, crap.
Sure.
I need to adjust to this now. Give me a second, guys, because I just got screwed.
Right, yeah. Which is totally reasonable and totally...
Absolutely. And we've said that to each other in the game.
You're like, my bad, guys. Give me a second.
Give me a second here.
Matt just screwed me.
Right.
The fact is, as a general rule, I would say there's very little downtime in the game, which is a positive.
Yeah. You're thinking and you're engaged the entire time.
So anything left to add that you really dig about the game?
One more thing is we've played with and we've played without the Advertisers mini expansion, the 4 new...
Yeah, I was going to hit on that later.
Experts. Okay. Let's hit on it now, my friend.
All right.
I like those, the Advertisers. I think because you can use a manager's action without paying a wine. But there's only the 4 of them in the assortment of experts to begin with.
Which is the expert, one for each of the colors or the different
nose,
characteristics.
The taste,
right.
The alcohol content. Yeah. I don't know. I find them to be very, very helpful. When you use it, it saves me a wine token. And which I think it just affords a little bit, maybe a few more victory points during the game.
It definitely, I agree with you that it's a nice addition. Not by any stretch is it necessary.
Absolutely not.
But it adds a nice little kick to it, which is what you kind of want in that type of mini expansion. It adds a little, but doesn't impact it too greatly. Obviously, we've enjoyed our plays.
Indeed, sir.
However, in every game known to man, there's going to be some things that people don't like.
It's dry.
Well, it's wine.
That's awesome. I was at the Balustrade Vineyards yesterday drinking wine.
Nice.
Yes, had the day off.
So some things that I don't like. It's a mother bear to teach.
Yep.
It's a mother bear to learn.
Yep.
The graphic design isn't perfect, like at the bottom of where the 3 bars are, to where you can take barrels away and place them in other places. It doesn't say when you can do that. It doesn't give you any hint that it must be in the different regions for renown cubes to be able to place those.
No clues on the board, you mean?
Right. Yeah. And so the graphic design could be a little bit better here or there, but that's the one main spot. Thematically, I don't really like how the experts work either. Again, if we're going to say that it's thematic and I really enjoy it, I need to point out the stuff that I don't. So when you buy these experts, thematically, however you want to frame that, putting them in your pocket, they're going to help you at a fair, even if you send a cheap bottle of Mad Dog 2020 to the fair. They're going to talk it up. They're going to BS you. But the thing is, you don't have to maintain a relationship with them. They're bought and paid for. When they're in your pocket, they stay in your pocket unless you use them at the fair. And then they go away. Right. But until then, you can keep using that special ability over and over and over. And I feel like there should be maybe some kind of upkeep.
You can only use it like 3 times because they only get flipped over
at the end of a fair. Right. But at the same time, I feel like there should be a little bit of upkeep. Thematically, I'm just saying it doesn't make a ton of sense. The other thing is the way you use experts or decide you may use those experts at the wine fair is just this closed fist bidding system. Yeah, the closed fist thing's weird. It just feels clunky.
Yeah. We talked about just going in turn order or something.
Right, or trying to figure out a more just smooth way to implement it. And I will say that even though I like the game, it can feel a little herky-jerky in a sense that it's not... Let me explain it to you this way, or try to explain it this way. In Craftsman, the board, at the end of a season, the board resolves left to right. Very procedural, very, we're going to do this, 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 and this. In Vinhos, though, it's you're jumping over here, you're jumping over there, you're moving over here, and it's not as fluid, maybe, is a good way to describe it, as it could be, I think, or maybe it's not even possible, but it just feels a little herky-jerky.
Okay. You know, like Craftsman is worker placement, and so the board's all about worker placement and placing your stuff on ships and everything, and this is the different areas of the board are just places to put stuff.
Sure, but I'm just saying that for my sense of order, it doesn't flow necessarily.
Sure,
that's all.
But I don't think it has to.
Agreed. Yeah. That's pretty much all I got as far as that. So, in summary, unless you had something else,
no,
sir?
Go fire.
Okay.
Fire.
In summary, I would put it like this.
Okay.
A surprisingly quick, plain, brutal on the brain game that I really enjoy. I don't like the idea of teaching it. I don't like the idea of learning it because it was a bit of a chore. But once you know the game, I'm quite happy that this brain melter's on my shelf.
Nice summary, man.
Thanks.
This game is very strong on something you're fond of saying, that competition of decision-making. Making those decisions correctly and the timing of those decisions is very, very critical. It's such a tight design. It's wonderfully complex in the blend of the mechanics. Really terrific game. And like you, I am very glad that it's on my shelf as well.
Which leads us into our rating.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is the first time you're listening, shame on you. But if it is, how our rating works, pretty simple. It's on a 1 to 4 scale. A 1, never want to play it again, never want to see it again. A 2, meh. A 3, yeah, good game. Looking forward to playing it. Probably want to own it. Yeah, that pretty much sums up a 3. And a 4 is go buy the game now. It's awesome.
Right.
It's just one of the best out there. Just go get it. So with that said.
Yes, sir.
As you guys know, we don't share our notes and stuff before the game or before the podcast. So I'm curious to hear what you have this rated as.
It's a 3.
Okay.
I think it's a great game. Although I own a copy, I don't consider it a must-own.
Okay.
I'd be happy to play a game, and as hard as it is to teach it, I'd be happy to teach it to people because I think it's good for them to experience this game if they're into heavier brain burners. And if you do own it, buy a copy of The Advertisers.
As for me, I also have it rated as a 3. Not a must-own, but if you enjoy the types of games that we do, you're probably going to want to check out this game if you haven't already.
You say not a must-own. Would you trade your copy?
No.
Me neither.
I'm a collector.
Isn't that weird?
Well, no.
Someone in your group should own this.
Yeah. So that's Vinhos by Untitled Chapter.
Thanks, Beats.
So changing gears real quick, let's roll into some other things that we...
Stuff.
Yeah, stuff. So I don't know if you want to call this a rant or a fill in the blank, whatever. Call it what you will. There's been a lot of discussion lately on Twitter and other places, but mostly on Twitter, about review copies of games and what is expected of reviewers. Let me start off by saying that we have not received a review copy of any game yet, but we have requested some, and all but one publisher has agreed to send them.
Yep.
We're not comfortable with saying what they are because what if something happens, whatever, but
sure, as
we get them, we'll mention them. We only promise the publishers to feature those games and trust us when we say they're games we really want and games that we really think you guys would want to hear a featured review about.
Heavy cardboard material.
We did not promise anything above a fair and honest review. If we don't like the game, we're going to tell you guys as much. Getting a review copy will not change a thing. Bottom line, our integrity is worth far more than a free game or two. Neither of us are that hard up for money that we have to sell ourselves for that. If a publisher would stop sending games because we gave what we feel is a fair and honest review of their game, well, to be honest with you, we wouldn't want to do business with them in the future anyway. That said, no publisher has said anything other than they want a fair and honest review. Some reviewers out there have said that they'd have a hard time being negative on a game that was given to them as a review copy that they didn't have to buy. We have no such hang-ups, but there is a difference between pointing out things that we don't like and just trashing the game.
Yeah.
Bottom line is, the trust that we've built up with our listeners and that we continue to build up isn't worth anything that could be offered to us. So hopefully in the future when we do get review copies that we stress to you guys and we've made it clear that we're going to be us. Just a free game doesn't matter that damn much. So yeah, end rant.
EOM. All right, on a lighter note, but equally important, I was thinking about theme.
Okay. Seems appropriate.
Sitting on the deck the other night. Is there a heavy game that you would like to see? What theme have you not seen a good heavy game on that you would like to see a good heavy game based on? Now, you know me, I was going to say Three Kingdoms, but
there's 2 games coming out.
Right. Three Kingdoms Redo, blah, blah,
Zango.
Right. So I think maybe we might get covered on the Three Kingdoms theme. I had a wild thought, a while back about, Polis. A 3-player Polis of the Three Kingdoms would be interesting, I think. The mechanics of that game are pretty heavy and wonderful. I was thinking about, I'll give you some more time to think here. I'm going to throw out another couple ideas. A software startup company. Being that, I work for a software startup company, in the game, does your company IPO for billions? Is everybody a millionaire, or are you just another failure on the ash heap, And, I think that might have the good makings of a good, hard Echo game, with heavy business management and people management mechanics and stuff like that.
That
could be really cool. Right. And then, maybe even, related to that is when you're a software company and you're creating and managing this large distributed software system to handle heavy consumer load, that could make a challenging game too. Where to me, it's like a reverse engine. Like, in so many games, I'm building up my engine to produce more and more and more. But in this game, the production's coming at me.
And you're having to
deal
with it.
And I have to handle it,
the thing that jumped into my mind right there is, you remember the video game Tapper?
No.
Well, dude's pulling, he's a beer tapper, and he has to serve the customers,
Nice.
and he has to, and so kind of like that. You got all this coming at you. And,
it could be wonderfully stressful. I mean,
right.
think about Visa on Black Friday. You know how much infrastructure they have to handle millions of credit card charges a second? And how screwed up it would be, like, if you couldn't buy your big screen TV at Best Buy on Black Friday.
Wow, you've given this a lot of thought. See, now I'm caught with my pants down. To be honest with you, the first thing that comes to mind is already in production, and I'm excited about it.
What's that?
So I feel
What's
like
that?
that's kind of I'm influenced by that. Is a coin game set in ancient Rome, ancient times. I mean,
but there are plenty of ancient games.
True. To be honest with you, I mean, I work in the aviation industry, and so something like that. But basically, that's 18XX just with aircraft instead of trains, so that doesn't really work. Man, I'm gonna have to. This is a good question to pose to people on the guild.
And yeah,
because then
that'd be great.
I think that's a good idea. I think we should do that. Let's do that. So yeah, I'll have to have some time to think about it, but I'm curious to hear what folks in the guild think.
Awesome.
So last thing I wanted to bring up was that, and I mentioned this on Twitter and got a really good response. So I'm excited about this. As our listeners know, I and Amanda, we are going to BGG Con. And I can say next month almost, because it is September 30th when we're recording. So
it's right. It's 3.5 hours from next month.
Right. And that's the week right before Thanksgiving. But I'm going to be doing some pod blasting every day at BGG Con, and maybe some very little edited video, very raw video, if you will. So if there's something you guys want to hear about, see, know, whatever, now would be a great time to start emailing in those questions. And how would they go about doing that, sir?
They can email us those questions at heavycardboard@gmail.com, or they can tweet them at heavycardboard, post something on Facebook, Heavy Cardboard, go to the website and leave a comment, heavycardboard.com.
So yeah, that about sums it up. We'll holler at you guys in a couple of weeks.
Indeed we will.
So go Ducks, go Canucks.
Go Broncos, go Avs.
See y'all later.
Bye. Ed, I know you've played some City Hall recently and you want to talk a little bit about it, and I'm really excited to hear about City Hall. So what's up?
Well, first off, before I get to City Hall, there were kind of two games that I wanted to hit on. The first one is Deadliest Catch, Sea Adventure game, designed by Joyce Johnson and Colleen. I can't do this. I'm trying so hard.
What the hell?
I'm trying so hard.
I'm like, what the hell?
I know. So I could feel
I'm like, wait a minute.
Hold on. Don't look at me.
All right.
Okay. Hold it together. Come on.
It's like Harvey Korman and Tim Conway.
If you'd shut up, I'll be okay. Just look away. Thanks.
Don't look at me. I'm hideous.
In the game, you get to be the captain of your all-time favorite ship.
All right.
I'm going to try this one more time.
I'm going to be editing on Friday night, for sake. Let's go here.